I still remember the moment like it happened yesterday. It was Thanksgiving, and after 2 sleepless nights of chopping, roasting, and stirring, I came downstairs in my apron, ready to bring the feast together. But the scene that greeted me nearly knocked the breath out of my chest. My family, plates piled high, laughter filling the room, already halfway through dinner. Without me. Then came the knife twist. My mother, phone in hand, announced to the table that the turkey was Adrien's special recipe. Adrien, my golden boy brother, who had strolled in 2 hours earlier, carrying nothing but his arrogance. In that instant, I understood. I wasn't family. I wasn't loved. I was just the help. And that night, I vowed to change everything. My name is Marissa Cole, and for most of my life, I believed a lie. The lie was simple, almost comforting. Family always comes first. I grew up in a modest 2-story home on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. My father, Henry, was the quiet, brooding type, a man who believed his word was law. My mother, Elaine, was the image of suburban perfection: church on Sundays, book club on Wednesdays, casseroles in the freezer labeled with masking tape. And then there was my brother, Adrien, 4 years younger, charismatic, and the undisputed golden child of the family. Me. I was the shadow. From the very beginning, it was obvious who the sun shined on. Adrien got the newest sneakers, the latest gaming console, the extra scoop of dessert at dinner. If he wanted piano lessons, they found the money. If I wanted art classes, my father said, "You can always doodle in your free time, Marissa. That's a hobby, not a future." I remember my 16th birthday as if it's been tattooed on the back of my mind. I had spent weeks dropping hints that I wanted a used set of paints from the art supply store downtown. Nothing fancy, just colors I couldn't afford on my babysitting money. On the morning of my birthday, my parents surprised me with a sweater. Meanwhile, Adrien, who wasn't even celebrating anything, got a brand new mountain bike because he had worked so hard at school. He had a C average. That day, as I folded my sweater with a smile plastered on my face, I told myself it didn't matter. They loved me in their own way, right? That's the thing about illusions. You cling to them because the truth feels unbearable. When I graduated high school with honors, the applause at the ceremony was polite but restrained. Adrien barely scraped by, and the family threw him a massive backyard barbecue. When I announced that I had been accepted into a small liberal arts college to study fine arts and education, my father sighed like I had personally betrayed him. "Teachers don't make money, Marissa. You'll regret this." But I didn't. I worked 2 jobs through college, waitressing at night, cleaning houses on weekends. My parents never offered to help. Not because they couldn't, but because Adrien always needed just a little more. Tuition, car insurance, rent money. And they gave it gladly. By the time I was 25, Adrien was on his 3rd attempt at college, and I was a certified art teacher at a public high school. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had built a life brick by brick while my brother waltzed through his, cushioned by the safety net I never had. Still, I told myself family was family. And the cruelest part, I believed them when they said they were proud. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every 4th of July, it was my job to make things special. I cooked, I decorated, I planned. They let me. Because deep down, they didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. They saw me as convenient. I was the organizer, the helper, the one who would sacrifice her weekend to make sure everyone else had a good time. I can still picture the way my mother's face lit up whenever Adrien walked into a room. Her voice would rise, cheerful and glowing, as though a celebrity had arrived. "Adrien! Oh, there's my boy!" Meanwhile, if I came in carrying grocery bags for a holiday meal, she'd barely glance up. "Marissa, could you set those down and start the potatoes?" It hurt, but I swallowed it. Again and again. At 45, I was still single. Not because I didn't want love, but because I was tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of dating men who mirrored my parents, taking my effort for granted and giving crumbs in return. My job as an art teacher was fulfilling enough. My students loved me. My colleagues respected me. In my classroom, I mattered. At home, I was background noise. Still, every holiday I returned. Part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe this year, my father would thank me for setting the table. Maybe my mother would brag about my accomplishments on Facebook instead of Adrien's latest business venture that hadn't even turned a profit. But illusions die hard. By the time Adrien bought his new house, a sprawling suburban palace financed mostly by my parents' savings, I realized something I'd buried for years. I wasn't just overlooked. I was erased. They had built their world around Adrien, and I was just a tool to keep it running smoothly. And yet, some stubborn ember inside me refused to let go of hope. I thought, if I keep showing up, if I keep proving my worth, they'll finally see me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Because it would take one brutal Thanksgiving, a night etched into my memory forever, to burn that illusion down to ashes. And in those ashes, something else would rise. Not hope. Not reconciliation. Revenge. Thanksgiving was supposed to be my holiday. For 30 years, it had been my responsibility, the one place where I thought maybe, just maybe, my work mattered. 2 days before, I stayed up until nearly dawn, basting turkey, baking pies, kneading rolls. I told myself that even if no one said thank you, at least the food would bring them together. But when I walked into the dining room that evening, apron still dusted with flour, what I saw hollowed me out. My family was already seated. Plates heaped high, glasses clinking, laughter echoing. They had started without me. I stood there, holding a tray of roasted vegetables like some invisible maid. My mother didn't even look embarrassed. She just smiled up from her phone, tapped a post on Facebook, and chirped. "Isn't Adrien's turkey just perfect? He's such a natural in the kitchen." Adrien, who had shown up only hours earlier, empty-handed except for a bottle of wine. He beamed, soaking in the praise, not bothering to correct her. I swallowed hard. My throat burned with words I didn't dare say. Because in that moment, I realized it didn't matter what I did. The narrative would always belong to Adrien. I was just the scaffolding propping up their golden boy's spotlight. Christmas came soon after, and with it, Adrien's newest showcase, his sprawling new house in Lake Oswego. Marble counters, crystal chandeliers. The kind of house that screamed money, even though everyone knew whose savings had helped make it possible. Weeks before, my mother called me with her list. "Marissa, you'll need to bring the turkey, the stuffing, your sweet potato casserole, you know the one Adrien loves, and a couple of pies. Oh, and come early to help set up. Adrien's very busy with the guest list, so he won't have time to decorate." Something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath. "No, Mom. I'm not doing all that this year." Silence. Then her voice, sharp as a blade. "Don't be ridiculous. Adrien can't do it all himself. You're not married, you don't have kids, you have the time. What else is your life even for?" I gripped the phone tighter. My pulse pounded. I said no. And that's when she delivered the line that seared itself into my bones. "Family exists because of Adrien, not you. Without him, we wouldn't even have reasons to gather." I don't remember hanging up. I only remember the cold, dizzy silence that followed, as though she had finally said the truth they'd been hinting at my entire life. You don't matter. You never did. On Christmas Eve, I showed up anyway, but only with myself. No casserole. No pie. No apron. The house glittered with lights. Guests mingled with champagne flutes. And there was Adrien, strutting like a peacock in a designer suit, announcing loudly that he had curated the entire Christmas dinner. Curated. As if I hadn't been the one curating every holiday for decades. When dessert was served, my sweet potato casserole, my pie, all lifted straight from my recipes. Adrien raised his glass for a toast. To family, he said, grinning. And to the tradition I've worked so hard to keep alive. I waited for someone, anyone, to speak up. To say, actually, that's Marissa's dish. But no one did. They clapped. They cheered. My mother beamed at him with the kind of pride I had begged for my whole life. Later that night, scrolling through Facebook, I saw the final nail in the coffin. Adrien had posted a photo of the feast, table groaning with food, lights twinkling, guests laughing. The caption read, "Christmas dinner curated by me. Grateful for the chance to give my family a night to remember." Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments praising his talent, his generosity, his devotion. And not a single mention of me. I felt something inside me crack. Not like a twig snapping, but like a dam breaking. All the years of being the invisible servant. All the birthdays ignored, the graduations overshadowed, the sacrifices dismissed. All the times I told myself they love me, just differently. It was all a lie. That night, lying awake in my tiny apartment, I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. I replayed every moment, every insult disguised as a joke, every request framed as obligation, every time my parents had chosen Adrien over me without hesitation. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I planned. They wanted to treat me like the help? Like the invisible scaffolding holding up their golden boy's house of cards? Fine. But scaffolding can be pulled away. And when it is, the whole structure comes crashing down. That was the night I made my decision. Not to scream. Not to beg. Not to explain. But to make them feel what I had felt my entire life. Invisible, unwanted, erased. Revenge had taken root in me, and this time I wasn't going to bury it. Revenge doesn't start with fire. It starts with paper, with patience, with proof. The morning after Christmas, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and my laptop. My phone screen glowed with every insult, every dismissal, every little reminder that I had been nothing more than my family's unpaid servant. I started with screenshots. Texts from my mother demanding I bring at least 3 side dishes. Messages where she called Adrien the reason our family feels complete. Photos she'd posted on Facebook. My food, Adrien's face. And then Adrien's own posts, grinning in front of dishes he had never touched an oven mitt for. Christmas curated by me. So grateful to host Thanksgiving in my new home. Lies polished into truth by the applause of friends and neighbors. One by one, I saved everything into neatly labeled folders. Receipts, recipes, screenshots, evidence of a life spent invisible. But this wasn't just about humiliation, it was about legacy. The Cole family house, the one my parents still lived in, had been my grandfather's. When he passed, he left it in trust for all of us, my father, my mother, Adrien, and me. The paperwork had always been vague, clouded by family understanding. Over the years, Adrien had spun that vagueness into ownership. He paraded the house as his future inheritance, boasting to anyone who would listen that Mom and Dad want me to have it. And they did. They repeated it enough that it almost felt real. Almost. But almost doesn't hold up in court. I dug into the old filing cabinet in my bedroom, pulling out the dusty folder marked Estate, Grandpa. My hands shook as I flipped through the yellowed papers, the faded signatures. And there it was, clear as day, my name. Beneficiary, Marissa Cole. Not erased. Not excluded. Written in black and white, binding as steel. Adrien might have charmed our parents, but the law still had room for me. I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Jennifer, a sharp, unsmiling woman with eyes like polished glass. I told her everything. The trust, the manipulation, the erasure. She listened in silence, then leaned back in her chair. You're not powerless, Marissa. Not legally. If the trust still names you, Adrien has no right to claim full ownership. With proper documentation, you could contest any transfer. You have standing. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of power. But legal battles weren't enough. Paperwork could protect my inheritance, but I wanted more than that. I wanted truth. Exposure. I wanted Adrien stripped of the golden light he wore like a crown. That's where Aunt Rachel came in. Rachel was my mother's younger sister, the family's quiet rebel. She'd never married, never played by Elaine's rules. Over the years, she had been my only soft landing, sending cards on my birthday, calling to ask about my art shows, slipping me $50 bills in college when Mom said she couldn't afford to help. We met for coffee at a little cafe downtown. The kind of place Adrien wouldn't be caught dead in because it didn't have valet parking. She took one look at my face and said, "They did it again, didn't they?" I nodded, told her about Thanksgiving, about Christmas, about the words my mother had finally let slip. Family exists because of Adrien, not you. Rachel's lips thinned. I always knew Elaine favored him, but to say it out loud, that's cruel. I slid the folder of evidence across the table. She opened it, eyes scanning the screenshots and photos. Then she let out a low whistle. You've got enough here to scorch the earth. That's the idea, I said. Rachel leaned closer. So what's the plan? I took a deep breath. The plan is to stop playing the servant, to stop letting them use me as their invisible scaffolding. Adrien wants to shine in front of this community? Fine. I'll make sure everyone sees the cracks in his story. He wants to claim the house as his? I'll prove it's mine as much as his. They wanted me erased, but instead, I'll erase the illusion they built around him. Her eyes gleamed with something between pride and warning. Revenge is a sharp knife, Marissa. Make sure you don't cut yourself, too. But I wasn't afraid of blood anymore. Over the next few weeks, I began laying the groundwork. Quiet, deliberate. I contacted Jennifer again to draft preliminary notices about the estate. I researched Adrien's finances. His flashy lifestyle didn't match his income. Mortgage records, car leases, unpaid property taxes. Every document painted the picture of a man living above his means. And socially, I waited. I bided my time. Community dinners, church events, little gatherings where Adrien strutted with his practiced grin. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I just listened, collected, smiled politely while he claimed credit for things I had done, tucking each lie into my arsenal. Because when the moment came, I wasn't just going to say my piece. I was going to take the stage he thought belonged only to him and shatter the spotlight into 1,000 shards. And this time, everyone would see me. Revenge isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about pulling the strings so carefully that when the curtain falls, your enemy destroys himself. By late November, the invitations to Adrien's legendary Christmas gala had already gone out. The neighborhood buzzed about it. A catered feast, live music, the house draped in holiday lights. Adrien basked in every compliment, every assumption that he was the man of the season. That's when I made my move. I called my mother, voice calm, almost sweet. Of course I'll help, I told her. I'll handle the food, just like always. Her sigh of relief was audible. I knew I could count on you, Marissa. Adrien has so much on his plate. I bit down on a laugh. Yes, he had so much on his plate, because I put it there. But this year would be different. Instead of spending sleepless nights in the kitchen, I quietly hired a professional catering company. Under Adrien's name. Every dish on the menu, every delivery scheduled as if he had arranged it himself. I even signed with his email, thanks to a password he'd once foolishly used for everything, which I still remembered. The contract was airtight. But here's the twist. 2 days before the party, I canceled the order. I called the company directly, citing personal family reasons. No food. No staff. Nothing. And of course, the cancellation confirmation went straight to Adrien's spam folder. Christmas Eve arrived like a stage set for disaster. Guests poured into Adrien's lavish house. Neighbors, co-workers, friends of friends. The music played, the wine flowed, the decorations gleamed. But the dining table sat bare, its centerpiece a lonely candle flickering against empty platters. I mingled quietly among the guests, sipping champagne, watching the unease ripple. Where was the feast Adrien had bragged about? Adrien fumbled, sweat shining on his forehead. The food's just delayed, he stammered, laughing too loudly. Any minute now. But minutes stretched into hours. The truth gnawed through his polished mask. Whispers spread. Eyes narrowed. Adrien's kingdom was crumbling, right there in his marble-tiled living room. And that's when I struck. At precisely 8 p.m., I pressed post. The compilation I had prepared for weeks went live on every social platform. Screenshots of Mom's texts demanding dishes, photos of my hands pulling a turkey from the oven, recipes written in my handwriting, juxtaposed with Adrien's boastful posts. Years of theft laid bare. The caption was simple. For decades, my labor was erased. Tonight, I choose truth. The post caught fire instantly. Shares. Comments. Outrage. People in the very room began checking their phones, their faces shifting from confusion to recognition to disgust. Wait! Adrien didn't cook any of this, a neighbor whispered. No, someone else replied, phone glowing in their hand. It was Marissa. 4 years. Adrien's face went pale as his own guests confronted him. Is this true? One woman asked sharply. He sputtered, eyes darting to me. She's lying. She's jealous. But the evidence was undeniable. Word by word, image by image, his credibility unraveled. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I simply stood there, calm as stone, while the golden boy drowned in his own lies. Then came the final blow. While Adrien was still stammering for excuses, I pulled an envelope from my bag and handed it to my parents. Inside was a lease agreement, an apartment in a modest complex across town. Paid in full for 1 year. This is where you'll be moving after tonight, I said evenly. I've arranged everything. After that, you're on your own. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. My father turned crimson. What is this nonsense? He barked. It's not nonsense, I said. It's boundaries. For years you've lived in luxury while I carried the invisible weight. I'm done. No more meals. No more labor. No more pretending. I am not your servant. I am not Adrien's shadow. Consider this my last gift. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adrien looked like a man struck by lightning, jaw slack, hands trembling. His carefully curated image shattered in front of everyone who had ever admired him. And it didn't stop there. Within days, the fallout spread like wildfire. My post went viral in the community, then beyond. Adrien's colleagues saw it. His boss saw it. The image of the self-made golden boy evaporated, replaced by the truth, a fraud who had stolen credit from his own sister. His girlfriend left him. Invitations dried up. The sponsorship deal he'd been bragging about? Cancelled. He was no longer a rising star, but a cautionary tale. My parents moved into the small apartment I had arranged, stripped of the house they had once dangled over my head like a prize I would never win. For the first time, they had to live without a safety net, without me. And me. I finally exhaled. For the first time in decades, I wasn't the ghost in the kitchen. I was the one who had written the story, and I had written it with fire. Humiliation has a way of sticking to a person, like grease that won't wash off no matter how hard they scrub. And for Adrien, that humiliation was only beginning. The fallout from Christmas spread quickly. At first, people whispered behind his back, neighbors at the grocery store, old friends at the gym. Then it escalated. His co-workers stopped inviting him to lunch. A few even sent me messages privately, thanking me for finally exposing the truth. To them, Adrien had always been the type who strutted around, stealing credit for work he hadn't done. My story only confirmed what they already suspected. At the office, they started calling him Chef Boyardee behind his back. One co-worker slipped an apron on his desk with the words "property of Marissa" stitched across the front. Adrien tried to laugh it off, but the veins in his temple told the real story. He wasn't laughing. He was drowning. Then came his girlfriend's exit. She had loved the spotlight, the glamorous dinners, the perception of Adrien as the perfect sun and rising star. But when the spotlight shifted, when the truth burned through his carefully crafted facade, she couldn't stomach the ridicule. One morning, she simply packed her things and left, posting on social media later, "Some men build their lives on lies. I refuse to live in someone else's shadow." That post was shared more times than I could count. Adrien's name became a punchline. And my parents, they hated the apartment I had arranged. Gone were the manicured lawns, the gated driveway, the pride of hosting grand holidays in a sprawling estate. Instead, they had peeling wallpaper, noisy neighbors, and no one to impress. Their friends stopped visiting. The phone stopped ringing. Without the stage Adrien had given them to flaunt, they had nothing left but each other, and bitterness. But Adrien wasn't done pretending. He was desperate to climb back into the light. 2 months later, he hosted a charity gala. He rented a suit far nicer than he could afford, rehearsed speeches about family values and community service, and plastered on his winning smile. He thought one polished evening could erase months of disgrace. He thought people would forget. He didn't know I was there too. Quiet. Watching. Waiting. The event was glamorous. Crystal chandeliers, the clinking of champagne glasses, tables dressed in white silk. Adrien worked the room like the star he used to be, shaking hands, charming donors. I saw the relief in his posture when people seemed polite, even friendly. He thought he was pulling it off. And then, at the height of the evening, while the host prepared to introduce Adrien for a speech, a sound filled the speakers. Not music. Not applause. A recording. "My parents are so easy to manipulate," Adrien's voice sneered, drunk and arrogant. "As long as I smile, they believe whatever I tell them. And Marissa? Please. She's useful, like a maid who doesn't realize she's a maid. All I have to do is say thank you once in a while, and she keeps cooking, cleaning, carrying. She was born to be my shadow." Gasps swept the ballroom. Forks clattered against plates. Adrien's face went white as plaster. "No, no, that's out of context," he stammered, hands raised like he could push the sound back into silence. But it was too late. The words looped, his own arrogance condemning him in front of every powerful person he had tried to impress. By the time the recording stopped, silence pressed against the walls. The audience didn't see a golden boy anymore. They saw a fraud. A user. A parasite. Adrien's attempt at recovery crumbled that night. Donations dried up. Calls went unanswered. His carefully polished image shattered beyond repair. Hours later, my phone rang. "Adrien." I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. His voice was hoarse, cracked. "You win, Marissa. You destroyed me. My friends, my career, my reputation. It's all gone. Are you happy now?" For a moment, I let the silence hang heavy. I thought about all the years I had scrubbed dishes alone, all the nights I cried in my car after family dinners where I wasn't even acknowledged, all the birthdays overshadowed by Adrien's latest triumph. And then I answered. Calm. Cold. Final. "No. Adrien, I didn't win. You lost. You've been losing your whole life. You just didn't know it until now. And the truth? You didn't need me to destroy you. You did that all by yourself. I ended the call before he could reply. For the first time in decades, I felt no weight on my shoulders. Only air. Only freedom. Adrien had always wanted me silent, invisible. But in the end, my silence was his loudest condemnation. And that night, for the first time, I didn't feel like a shadow. I felt like the light. 1 year later, my life looked nothing like it used to. Gone were the endless days of bending myself into shapes just to fit inside a family that never made room for me. Gone were the frantic phone calls from my mother, the passive-aggressive texts demanding I show up early to cook or decorate, the suffocating weight of being the family's invisible laborer. Instead, my mornings began with sunlight pouring through the wide windows of my new art studio in downtown Portland. I'd sip coffee while the first students trickled in, teenagers from broken homes, single mothers taking evening classes, retirees rediscovering a passion they'd lost decades ago. My studio wasn't just about teaching art. It was about giving people the thing I had craved my entire life: acknowledgement. A place where their efforts mattered. A place where their names weren't erased. Rachel became my anchor. Every Saturday she came by with fresh flowers for the front desk, her presence filling the studio with warmth. She was the one who reminded me that family wasn't about blood, it was about choice. About the people who show up, not the ones who take until there's nothing left. And I had friends now, real friends, colleagues, students, neighbors. We shared meals, celebrated birthdays, laughed until midnight. For the first time, I was part of a circle where no one treated me like a shadow, where my name wasn't whispered only when someone needed something from me. Of course, my birth family all but vanished from my life. Adrien, last I heard, was scraping together consulting gigs, trying desperately to crawl back into relevance. My father retreated into silence, ashamed or maybe too proud to admit he'd backed the wrong child all those years. And my mother, she reached out once. It came in the form of a letter, handwritten on the stationery she used for Christmas cards. The envelope sat in my mailbox for 2 days before I opened it. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. The words inside were simple, almost trembling. Marissa, I don't expect forgiveness. I know I failed you as a mother. I should have seen you, valued you, protected you. Instead, I let Adrien's shine blind me, and I let my own pride silence your voice. For that, I am sorry. Truly sorry. I read it 3 times. And then I folded it carefully and placed it in a box with old sketchbooks and photographs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't feel the old ache clawing at my chest, begging me to run back and try one more time. Because the truth was, I no longer needed their apology to breathe. I didn't need their approval to feel whole. That little girl inside me, the one who stood invisible in the corner while Adrien blew out candles on my birthday cake, she had finally grown up. She had finally walked away. And I had built something better. That Thanksgiving, I hosted a dinner in my studio. Long tables stretched across the space, covered in mismatched tablecloths and candles donated by students. Everyone brought a dish. No one person carried the burden. We ate, we laughed, we passed plates and stories around like treasures. As I looked around at faces glowing in the candlelight, faces of people who truly saw me, I realized something profound. Family is not the people who share your blood. Family is the people who share your heart. And mine was finally full. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about reclamation, taking back the pieces of yourself that were stolen, withheld, or dismissed. My revenge had started as a sharp blade, but it ended as something softer, something truer. Not rage, not bitterness, just freedom. And in that freedom I found joy. So now, when people ask me about my family, I smile. Because I do have one. just not the one I was born into. I have Rachel, my students, my friends, my community, people who choose me every day, not because they need what I can do for them, but because they value who I am. That is enough. More than enough. And if there is one truth I carry with me, one truth that cost me decades to learn, it is this: I am not their servant. I am not their scapegoat. I am Marissa Cole. And I finally chose myself.